Hello, everybody, and welcome to Music Industry Insights Worldwide. Today, we've got such a great guest with us, Nat Cummins. Hi, Nat, how are you?
Hi, Saskia. I'm great. It's really good to be on this.
Oh,
Thank you for having me.
thank you so much for coming along today. It's a pleasure. Do you want to tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself, where you're from, and what you do?
Yep, so I'm Nat. I'm originally from Manchester in the north of England. I'm currently based in Berlin, Germany,
Lovely.
and I've been here for around 10 years. I'm an artist manager, a music industry consultant. I run an independent record label, Red Tape Music,
Yeah.
and I also write a free educational blog on Substack called Unlabelled. And that's Q&As with artists about all the technical things in the music industry that they might not know and not know who to ask.
Oh,
So, yeah.
so great. And you've got many hats there. So tell us a little bit more about the music management and the consulting and the difference between the two.
Yeah, so I realized, I mean, I've been in the music industry for almost 20 years now,
Yeah,
and I realized that the industry is shifting a lot, and a lot of artists I speak to these days don't necessarily want a traditional label anymore,
yeah,
but
yeah,
they still need the structure. You know, they want to focus on the creativity, the releasing music, and that's great, and that's very accessible, but a
mm,
lot of them just generally record, upload, and hope
yeah,
and so I kind of set up the consultancy as being an alternative to a traditional label where they can come to me with questions, either as a one-off session or as an ongoing like consultant throughout the whole process, handling things like the metadata, giving them advice on how to actually plan out releases,
super important.
all the really technical things that they don't think about.
Hmm.
And yeah, so people come to me for that instead of using a traditional label model, and will kind of grow the career as and when they need help. So they have full control, they have full ownership of all their rights. Nothing gets signed to me.
Brilliant.
Everything is entirely them. They just kind of pay me one-off fees as and when they need help for someone with my expertise.
Yeah.
Um, with the management, it's a little bit more of a traditional model. So it is I'll look after the business side of their career and advise them and help with artist development for a percentage of what they earn.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of difference between the consultancy and the management. And yeah, it's interesting because it is kind of like realizing that people do want way more control now, and the sort of traditional
Yeah.
model of signing everything away instantly and not
Absolutely.
having that control isn't really there anymore.
Absolutely. And I think that's great because it sounds to me like you're dealing with strategy and how to get artists from A to B, which is fantastic. And as you know, there's not much money in music as there used to be. It's become very demonetized. So do you think that has a massive impact on up and coming artists and developing artists now?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the big things that I work on is how to do as much as possible with as little budget.
Yeah.
So, some of the campaigns I've run, and even on my label side, I'm a very small indie label that I'm running myself and funding myself. We, our marketing campaigns are usually ran on less than €100, and
Wow.
we will try and do as much as we can. And so, you have to be very clever with your time and
Yeah.
with where you invest. And again, one of the things that kind of pushed me forward into doing this consultancy work is that I saw that the algorithm on Instagram
Oh,
pushes so many artists to buy quick fixes,
yeah.
and artists end up spending so much money on things that aren't ever going to progress their career because they're fed all these wonder stories of pay us £500 and we will get you to
Number
10,
one.
100,000 followers on
Yeah.
Spotify and
Yeah.
all these false promises.
Yeah.
And so I tend to approach it in a little different way. I'm going, you don't need to spend all this right away.
Mm,
I believe very firmly in a direct to fan model.
yeah. Cool.
So that's what I work with a lot with my artists, where I'm like, you can, instead of spending money, you can spend time.
Yeah.
And obviously, time is money, but that time that you invest in your fans and building a community around your music
Mhm.
is going to be what takes you to the next level and then builds a sustainable income for you. So, an example, one of the bands I've been working with recently, they were a little unsure about this direct to fan thing, and we started pushing Bandcamp very heavily. We
Yeah.
managed to get editorial on Bandcamp,
Mhm.
and 3 weeks after the release, they're still getting actual income from it. And this band have been going for 5 or 6 years now, And in the last 3 weeks, they've made more money from sales on Bandcamp than they have in the entire time they've been releasing just on streaming platforms.
There you go.
So it's shifting the model and kind of letting artists know there are other opportunities out there. There's a lot of specialist direct-to-fan platforms as well. Obviously, everyone knows Patreon, but there's some more that are things like Sleeve FM coming out of Denmark, which is designed specifically for artists. So I like to talk to them a lot about alternative ways of making money to build a sustainable career. But a big thing is the artist's goals as well. That's one of my first things I ask when I meet with someone is, what is success to you?
Yeah.
Because some people do want to be able to say, oh, but all my tracks stream over 1 million streams on Spotify, and that's fine. Others want to say, I just want to make music and live off it. So, it's kind of tailoring expenditure and tailoring income to what the artist's kind of definition of success is.
And also marketing has become a massive part of music now. How important is it for an artist to know their audience and where to place their music?
Oh, that's the most important thing right now. Finding where your community lives, be that online or in a physical space, is the number one thing that I tell all artists to really look into. So, you can have a look at a lot of analytics online to see the age demographics across different platforms and kind of hone in on that. And also, if you're playing live shows, then kind of scan the room and see, are these younger people, are they like 16 to 25? They're going to live in a completely different place to an older audience that's maybe 35 plus. They'll be living in a completely different space as well. And then target the marketing into them. So whether that is physical activations, whether that is standing at the merch desk and having conversations and setting up a mailing list and being like, we'll just communicate via email, or, TikTok obviously is a big one for the younger fans. Although I know a lot of artists kind of push back on TikTok a little bit at the moment because they want to feel authentic and they're like, we don't want to jump on trends. But finding where they live and then really honing in on specific platforms. I'm not a big fan of the whole scatter approach of content across every single platform. And, sometimes artists will say to me, but I become a content creator and an influencer, then not a musician. And I think that's a really important definition. If you're spending more time recording different content for TikTok, following trends there, Instagram Reels, and then you're, on Discord, and then you're on Facebook doing completely different things, then your whole life is just built up by content creation. So I tend to tell them to look for where their fans are living and hone in on that. You can keep the other platforms secondary, but, really hone in on your people and give them what they're looking for as well. Fans want to be involved. And so I feel like the best marketing is activating your community and getting them involved. So, things like having little competitions or secret messages via DMs of going, one artist I'm working with, we're about to launch their EP rollout at the moment, and they've been giving away free stickers at shows. And then their competition they're running is who can take a photo of these stickers in the most random places. And already someone sent a picture from Thailand of the band's logo on a sticker on the back of a door in Thailand.
It's amazing how far the message can travel as well, right? That's amazing. And obviously you've been in the music industry for 20 odd years now. You started in the UK and you've moved to Germany. Tell us a little bit more about the differences you see, obviously being in the UK and then going to Germany, and what made you go to Germany?
So the UK is obviously a very well established, it's one of the original music industry markets, second biggest market in the world. It's very corporate, it's very stable. The industry is very traditional, and sometimes when I look back at my time in the UK, and in the UK I worked for major labels, and then I was at Ministry of Sound, so big institutions and well-known names. And sometimes it felt like trying to turn the Titanic. So the world around the industry was changing so quickly. I mean, when I first started, Spotify was still in beta. That's how long I've been around. Physical was the main driver. Spotify was brand new, and kind of watching that internally, the industry trying to even switch to digital felt like it was going so slow. And I feel like that, the industry is great. Obviously, there's a lot more funding and a lot more finance in the UK, but it's still very, very structured and very focused on a super commercial version of success.
Yeah.
Germany, on the other hand, because it is, and especially Berlin, is such a young market, and I feel like people here take risks a lot more.
Yeah, been there. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, they're very, very quick to pivot. And that's exciting. And Berlin is such a creative city. You kind of have all sorts of weird experimental stuff coming out of every corner of the city.
Yes.
If something is popping off, people aren't just locked into, oh, well, this is the way we've always done things. They'll go, okay, actually, maybe we will try doing an in-store in a really random venue and see how that pops off. They have things like, in Germany, they're called Spätis, which is basically like a off-license corner store, bodega type shop.
Cool.
And large acts, like last year there was an act called Roya out of Denmark who came to Berlin. They were going viral online, and they came to Berlin and did a pop-up sold-out concert in a Späti.
Okay.
And so like these unusual venues where people are just like, oh, this is great. And it kind of all spilt out onto the street, and they got a load of amazing content for it, but it was also like a really intimate experience. And I feel like things like that happen a lot more often in Berlin. Okay. But yeah, as for moving over here, I was in London for 10 years, and I felt like I had kind of gone through the ringer a bit of like the working from, I'd get into the office at 8 o'clock in the morning. I could easily be still there 7, 8 o'clock in the evening, just working. And there wasn't much of a balance. And then I came to Berlin, and Germans are very strict about their work-life balance. It hits 5 p.m. and everyone's like, okay, Feierabend, which means like free evening. And everybody goes and has a life outside. And with that, it's meant that I've been able to focus on work very heavily and get everything done. But then I still have time to go to concerts in the evening. I can, actually have a bit of a life outside of just focusing on whatever projects I have going on at the time. So yeah, my gig attendance has gone up rapidly since moving to Germany, because I have time to actually go as a fan, not just as someone working, which I feel it's really important when you're in this industry to reconnect as a fan yourself and not just be in work mode 24/7.
Yeah, and I did notice that Germany's kind of different genre-wise, right? There's a few different genres in Germany than there are in the UK. Can you explain that as well?
Yeah, so Berlin in particular is obviously very electronic music heavy. It's very techno. In Berlin, the clubs, including Berghain, which is the most famous one everybody's heard of, are actually protected as cultural institutions. They're given the same status as museums. In Berlin. So there's a lot of electronic music happening here. Also, Berlin is a very heavy punk scene, and that's going way back to the 70s. Some of the earliest punk shows were before the fall of the Berlin Wall. There was the pocket of creativity in West Berlin as well for like experimental music that came through with like David Bowie's famous Berlin trilogy that he released. Iggy Pop spent a lot of time in Berlin. It's always been seen as a place to push boundaries and creativity. And then externally, Germany wider has a very, very heavy rock scene, metal scene. And there's also a lot of like Deutsch rap as well. So there's a great kind of like German language rap scene that comes up through the country that's like very niche. Obviously, it's hard for that to spread out external from the kind of German language speaking country, so Germany, Austria, Switzerland. But within the country, it is massive. Everybody knows who these artists are, which is interesting as a foreigner and a native English speaker to be like, oh God, I've never heard of these people, and they are huge.
Which is really cool, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. It is very different. Obviously they still do get the big global superstars here, but then there is this like microcosm of superstars within Germany too.
Yeah. That's lovely. And obviously you've been in the industry for like 20 years, like you said. As being a woman in the industry as well, what kind of issues and barriers have you faced in career progression, being taken seriously? And have you ever suffered from discrimination or anything like that?
Yeah, it has. I always say that I have to work 10 times harder to be taken as seriously as someone, as a man in the room. Even now, even kind of 20 years in, I've been in positions where I've literally said something about a discussion in an A&R meeting, a marketing meeting, and then a male colleague has repeated the same thing verbatim. And it's been like, oh yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I've kind of, because I've been in the industry a very long time, I'm now at the point where I will straight up say, I'm pretty sure I just said that.
Good on
And
you.
I will call them out and make the room uncomfortable. But, early in my career, I would just kind of sit there and go, oh, okay, and just be quiet. And it took a very long time for me to find my voice because of that. And I wouldn't even put myself forward for promotions, or I wouldn't put myself into positions where I could be questioned, because I was like, well, no one's going to listen anyway. So I'll just keep my head down and keep quiet. And I'm lucky to be in this room.
Yeah.
And that was the feeling that I had a lot of the times of like, you're lucky to be here, especially being a woman, being a queer woman, and also being from a working class background. I felt like I kind of had the trifecta of, oh, I don't belong in these rooms.
Yeah.
And so it took a very, very long time to be able to go, actually, no, my voice matters. And it changed for me when I started seeing younger women coming through. And I was like, they're looking to me to be someone who's done this. And so it's like, I need to start speaking up because I don't want them to feel this way too.
Yeah, good on you.
Yeah.
Oh, so sad when I hear these stories as well, and I've heard it so many times. And obviously, how does that impact you, and how does it impact the way you feel about yourself, in these rooms when you're just as good as anyone else?
It's incredibly frustrating. And honestly, it is why I decided to launch Red Tape and break out on my own. I was sat, not just for myself, but for artists coming through as well. I was sat in an A&R meeting a few years ago, and we were looking at the plan for the year. And we had all the artists and the rollouts up on the board. And I just raised in the meeting, I was like, on this roster, we only have 2 female artists. Can we focus on the gender disparity this year? And a senior member of the team turned and said, well, it's not our fault that they're too difficult to work with.
Oh.
And that was a moment for me where I internally went, absolutely not. If I'm sitting in these rooms and this is being said to my face, then what's being said elsewhere? And I sat there and I made a very conscious internal decision of, if I'm not part of the solution, I'm part of this problem.
Right.
And so I started laying the groundwork for what is now Red Tape Music, which is my label that is female first, queer first, neurodiverse. I say it's artists that the mainstream industry may often overlook because perhaps they're deemed too quote unquote difficult. But these are incredible artists who deserve to be heard. And it's not just a tokenism, oh, we're just working with female artists. These are incredible artists with amazing points of view and perspectives and voices that I want to start pushing out into the world and having, people take notice. And yeah, I just couldn't be part of that anymore, because it also made me feel like, well, maybe I should just quit and go and do something else. I could be earning good money, if I apply these skills into accounting or into, marketing, go and work in the city and make a lot of money. But I do this because I love music and I want to give a voice to people like me.
That's lovely, Nat. And tell us a little bit more about Red Tape. How long's that been about? What artists have you got on your label? What's coming up? Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so officially, we're still a very baby label. Officially, we've been running since the 1st of December was the official launch date, although I've been working with the artist since May last year. And we did have our first release in October, and then our second release on the label came out in February, sorry. And then we're kind of rolling out over the year. I've got a third artist coming out in March. So I work primarily in punk, metal, rock, anything a little bit weird and noisy. So artists like, there's a hardcore band from London called La Rocks. that's fronted by this amazing woman, Laura. They're going to be touring a lot in the UK coming up. So they're playing Manchester Punk Fest over Easter weekend. They're going to be doing a few festivals towards the end of the summer as well, down in Bristol, Attitude Fest and Burn It Down in Torquay. So they're really gathering traction. They're also going to be doing a German tour in the summer. And they're very loud, very aggressive. And Laura is just incredible as a front woman. She commands the stage like nobody I've ever seen. It could be a tiny pub, it could be a huge festival stage, and she owns it. And then I'm working with a band from Bolton called Pageant Mum, which is an amazing name. They're more post-hardcore, pop punk, a little bit like Paramore, if Paramore were Northern. And they're very young. Izzy, their singer, is 18 years old, and I discovered them when I went to a festival in London as a fan. It was at the Garage in Islington, and 600. Sorry?
That's where I live, 5 minutes away.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I love the Garage. The Garage is one of my favorite venues, and it was sold out completely. They were the first band on of the day, 18 years old, and she came out on the stage and had the entire crowd eating out the palm of their hands within seconds. And I was like, I need to work with them. I need to know what they're doing. I need to work with them. And that rollout so it's their first EP with Red Tape, came out in February, and we've managed to do things like get coverage in Spin magazine. We got New and Notable on Bandcamp, and there's such an industry buzz around them. And we're kind of really developing their style and their sound, and just kind of, I think the next year or two is going to be really interesting for them, especially as they're so young, and just, it's an exciting time to be involved with someone like that.
Sounds like they're in the right place as well. So it sounds like we've got the right people around them. So I'm sure they'll do really well, and I'll keep an eye out as well, for sure.
Yeah.
So tell us, what would you like to see improve in the next couple of years in the music industry? We've already talked about so much, but what would you like to see improve? What could we do better?
I think accessibility is a really big thing. I am very anti-gatekeeping. Like I said, coming from a working class background, I didn't even realize the music industry was an option for someone like me. And I was told repeatedly it wasn't an option for someone like me. But I was very lucky. When I was 16, I won a competition that was a weekend away at the Liverpool Institute of Performing Arts. And it was basically a weekend of workshops and taster sessions around the creative industries. And they selected one young person from each county in the UK to go along to this event. And that was when I was like, oh, there are all these things I could do. And I honed in then at 16 and was like, the music, this is what I want to do. I want my own record label one day. I want to do this. But then I hit the barrier of how do I learn these things?
Wow.
And I, somehow by luck, determination, and just barging my way into the right rooms at the right time, gathered a lot of knowledge. My career has been so broad. I've done tour managing, artist management, licensing, sync, rights management, headed up the copyright team at SoundCloud, ran record label. I've kind of done the whole breadth. And SoundCloud especially made me realize how much information is missing for young people who want to do things right. Yeah. I would see contracts daily that people had signed and they had no idea what they were signing. And then we talk about it and they're like, but where do I get the information? I can't afford to go and pay to go and do a course to learn about this. And so much is, even across the industry as professionals, people know their niche and there's no information about what goes on in other parts of the industry. So I feel like breaking down barriers to education is something that the industry really needs to improve on. I think communication and less gatekeeping around how things work is going to be the way the industry as a whole moves forward. I think more collaboration between different areas, whether that's live, recording, licensing, sync, the whole ecosystem needs to start working together a little bit more. The kind of funding for working class musicians as well. I mean, there was a report that came out recently that was basically saying that class should be basically a protected characteristic, and because the music industry is so difficult to enter for working class kids now because you need the money to get there. And so I feel like that's a conversation that needs to be had around kind of like, how do we encourage people from these backgrounds into this industry, and how do we actually support them? How do we give them the knowledge that they need? How do we give them the access that they need? Because, you look back through history, some of the greatest music of all time, especially in the UK, has come from working class bands.
Absolutely.
Like the Beatles, Oasis, you look at artists like that, the kind of Sex Pistols, The Jam, all these iconic artists that have come through, are from working class backgrounds. And I feel like we've lost that a little bit. And that needs to be a conversation that, happens more and kind of is encouraged. So, yeah.
And Nat, how could the listeners connect with you, find out more about the work you're doing, connect with you, collaborate with you? How could they do that?
Yep. So Instagram is Nat Cummins Music, or I have a website, natcummins.com, or LinkedIn, which is just Nat Cummins. And then if you want to follow the label, it's Red Tape Music DE or redtapemusic.de. But yeah, Instagram's probably the easiest way to connect with me directly. But yeah, and if you want to follow the label and the artists, they're all tagged up on there as well on Instagram. So
I'll leave links in the description below. And before we go, are there any major wins and successes you'd like to share with us before you go?
I think one of the things I am proudest of is launching my Substack, Unlabelled, because the feedback from that has been incredible, and it's something I've dreamt about doing for a really long time. It's not written as a traditional educational resource. It's written in the style of, you ask your mate down the pub how to do something, but your mate happens to be someone who's been in the music industry 20 years. So I'm incredibly proud of that. I did find out via a colleague that there are some music schools across the UK, especially up in the north of England, that have been directing their students to it as a secondary resource for their kind of university courses, which to me was the highest compliment I think I've ever received. So it's not a big flashy, like, oh, I've had #1 album in this country type achievement, but to just hear that it's hitting the audience that I wanted and is being well received was probably one of the proudest moments, especially in the last 12 months, of knowing that what I'm doing is actually reaching people. So yeah, so if anyone wants to follow me on Substack as well, that's Nat Cummins.
Okay, I'll make sure that's in the link as well below. So thank you ever so much. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and well done with all the work you're doing. I'm really impressed.
No, thank you so much, and thank you for this opportunity. It's been incredible. And yeah, if I'm back in London, I'll have to drop you a message, and I'll probably be back in Islington soon.
Okay, well, if you are, please do let me know, because I'm only around the corner. So that'd be great. Yes. Thanks so much.
Amazing. Thank you.